Good evening, this is World Talks on TVP World, and I'm Anna Kalczyńska. 3 days away of a potential breakthrough summit in Alaska between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, questions loom over the inscrutable deal to get a ceasefire in Ukraine. According to Trump, Russia and Ukraine will engage in, quote, land swapping that will be good and bad for both countries. Trump also promised to consult the European leaders immediately after the conversation with Russian president. But is the peace-through deal enough to guarantee a ceasefire in Ukraine? And who benefits from this form of a frozen status quo? To delve on this topic, we're joined by David DeBatto, geopolitical analyst and retired U.S. Army counterintelligence officer. Good evening, sir, and thank you so much for joining us here on TVP World.
Thank you for asking me.
So, stopping the war has become an ultimate goal for Donald Trump and a recurring phrase used by him. What do you make of it? What does it mean to stop the war for Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
Well, of course, it means very different things to Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. For Donald Trump, it literally means stopping the war by any means possible. He just wants an end to this because, as I'm sure most, if not all of your viewers know, President Trump said on the campaign trail and after he was inaugurated that he can stop this war within 24 hours. Well, we're in 200 plus days of his presidency, and the war is more violent and catastrophic than ever. So for Trump, it's very important just to stop the war, meaning end it at any cost. For Vladimir Putin, it's an existential crisis, meaning he can't just end the war by walking away. Anything short of what he declares as a Russian victory could very well not only mean the end of his leadership in Russia, but the end of his life.
Exactly. Any costs that you mentioned on the part of Donald Trump is certainly worrying for the Ukrainians and, of course, to some of the Europeans as well. After months of negotiations, failed negotiations, this time Vladimir Putin agreed to sit at the table. So what is the strategy behind Russia's sudden reorientation towards a ceasefire?
Well, there's no reorientation. And let me just say at the outset, I very much hope and will be overjoyed if the result of this summit between Putin and Trump is a fair deal for Ukraine. When I say fair, meaning that they're not forced to capitulate to Russia, that they have security guarantees, solid security guarantees, whatever they are. Having said that, I don't expect to be very, very happy or overjoyed. I expect to be disappointed again. Let me just say at the outset that the fact that Donald Trump is meeting Putin in Alaska is already a diplomatic coup for Putin, and it's a loss and a disgrace for the West. Here is an internationally convicted, or at least indicted, war criminal under international law. And he is coming into America, into an American state, to conduct these meetings. That's a disgrace. It's a slap in the face, not only of Ukraine, but of all nations who respect international law. I believe that Putin should be allowed to come to Alaska to meet with Donald Trump. He should be allowed to be placed into handcuffs as soon as he lands at the airport in Alaska. And that's about it.
Absolutely. I mean, as much as we all are in favor of a fair deal for Ukraine, we also have to be realistic and accept the reality on the ground. I believe Donald Trump is a realist. However, he keeps on coming back on territorial concessions. And this phrasing is the more difficult to accept that we know very well this war is not about territory, it's about the sovereignty of the whole of Ukraine. So will President Trump make other concessions to Putin, you think?
I'm very afraid of that. Look, I know that the press, the mainstream press, both in the United States, here in my country, but also in Europe, is trying to downplay the possible downsides of this. the worst possible scenarios of what Donald Trump may give away to Putin. This whole land swap, as you mentioned, that keeps coming up in the press. What exactly does that mean? What swapping what land? I mean, it's even been mentioned that they're talking about giving Alaska back to Russia. And yes, that's funny, but with Donald Trump, anything is possible. I don't think that's going to happen. But as far as, okay, your question, what concessions, what is it really going to mean for Ukraine? I do believe that Donald Trump is prepared and possibly has already made a deal with Putin to force or to attempt to force Ukraine to give up their positions in the Donbass, the positions that the Ukrainian armed forces currently occupy, and areas that Russia only partially occupies, cede them all to Russia, have Ukraine pull all of their forces out of eastern Ukraine and just agree that this is now part of Russia. I hope that doesn't happen. I believe that that's part of this deal. I believe that's what Donald Trump means by a land swap. And what has Putin said about this? He's agreed to pull his forces out of a fairly minuscule area that they hold in northeastern Ukraine around Sumy, which is just ridiculous on the face of it. But he would hold all of eastern Ukraine and, of course, Crimea, which is another area we can talk about. So I fear that Donald Trump is going to do everything short of possibly a capitulation for Ukraine. I know Ukraine's not going to accept it, but I believe Donald Trump is going to attempt to force them to accept such conditions.
Yes, President Trump already mentioned that he was dissatisfied with Zelensky's refusal to consider territorial concessions to Russia as part of the agreement. So can we guess which territories are we talking about? And what will Trump get in return apart from rewarding the aggressor?
Well, good point. Let me just say, to follow up on what you just said, Donald Trump said he was, and quoting here from a press piece, he was a little bothered that President Zelensky said that he wasn't allowed to. You have to get constitutional approval to give up these lands that Putin is asking for, that Donald Trump may force him to try to give to Russia. And that rubs me the wrong way, because as your listeners, I'm sure your viewers know, we're going through some problems here right now with our Constitution and President Trump's, how shall I say, his understanding of the U.S. Constitution. So when he says that he's bothered by President Zelensky referring to the Ukrainian Constitution, not allowing him to give up these lands, territory, to Russia, that bothers me a lot, and it should bother anyone who believes in democracy and not rewarding an aggressor for invading a sovereign territory. What does it mean for Ukraine? Again, I hope this doesn't happen. I believe that President Trump is going to forcefully attempt to have President Zelensky give up these territories. I believe that's what he means by a land swap. What does Trump get out of this? He's really trying for a Nobel Peace Prize. That may sound funny to some people or humorous, but it's something he really, really does want. He believes if he stops this war in any way whatsoever, even if that means the unconditional surrender of Ukraine to Russia, that he will be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. More than that, this is about money. It's always about money. He believes, and he probably is correct, that he's going to open up huge new business possibilities, commercial possibilities, not just for American corporations, but for the Trump Corporation and for himself personally. I know it's not a secret that he's been working with deals with the Russian government already. And if he agrees to this semi-capitulation with Ukraine and Russia, that will open up a world of commercial possibilities for him and for American businesses. Businesses, by the way, that are beholden to him, that have now bended knee, kissed his ring, and literally given him billions of dollars so he supports their corporations.
All right, but let me rephrase that. Business thrive in peace. So perhaps this peace through deals is not such a bad deal after all. Maybe Donald Trump will do whatever in his power to maintain peace, for that matter.
Well, I guess we could say the same thing when Nazi Germany conquered all of Europe. There was peace after that. It wasn't a peace I think anybody would like, living under the Gestapo and the SS, but there was peace, and business did occur throughout all of Europe during the Nazi occupation. So I don't think that it's ever a good idea to reward aggression, to reward an invader, to reward someone who flaunts international law and invades a sovereign nation with opening up business opportunities.
Right.
That means we're going to reward them with money. There'll be peace in a way, I guess, in Ukraine as it's occupied, and their men are impressed, meaning they're forced to join the Russian Federation military. And so no, it's not a good idea, even in peace.
All right. So, but let's talk about the reality on the ground in Ukraine. The situation is quite morose for the Ukrainians. Russia is slowly but steadily advancing and occupying more territory. So do you think the situation is so dire to the point of forcing Ukraine to make concessions?
No, and I think that's an important point, and I'm glad you asked that. Again, a lot of the mainstream press, if not most of it, in the United States and in Europe, is giving the world the impression that the Ukrainian military is on its last legs, that they're out of gas. They don't have enough personnel. They have no ammunition. Morale is terrible. They're gone. They're just out of it. And the Russian army is getting stronger and stronger every day. In fact, it's the reverse. The Russian army is in disarray. It's a catastrophe. They're losing well over 1,000 soldiers a day, killed, wounded, and missing in action. The desertion rates are staggering. They have lost an incredible amount of equipment. The Ukrainians are more and more successfully making drone attacks on Russian command and control centers, logistical hubs, railway centers and hubs, munitions factories, gas and oil facilities and refineries that are really affecting the Russian military effort. So to be honest with you, and it's been said by others that in fact, the Ukrainian military is the one that is in better shape right now than the Russian military. And if they were just supplied with the ammunition and weapons that they've been asking for, they could absolutely and decisively defeat the Russian military.
Well, I remember one phrase, nothing about us without us. The golden Polish political rule has not been applied to Ukraine, apparently, this time in Alaska, where the Ukrainian president has been excluded from the talks. So this is reminiscent, unfortunately, of the tragic experiences of this part of Europe and of Yalta Agreement. Do you think that there might be other agreements in Alaska cemented between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, other than Ukraine, like, for instance, relocation of U.S. troops to other areas from the eastern flank of NATO?
Yes, I believe there's probably. Yes, I believe that there's probably already been side agreements that were made while Witkoff was there. Before that, even when Marco Rubio was part of the negotiations. And that is why, again, if you've noticed, Donald Trump has softened his stance, of the very brief stance, where he was antagonistic towards Vladimir Putin. As we all know, the August 8th deadline for increased sanctions has come and gone. And now he's talking again as if Putin is not his best forever friend, but that he's a pretty nice guy and that deals can be made. So, yes, I believe that, like I said, the commercial part of it, the money part of it is very, very important. I believe that a lot of different deals, aside from just ending the conflict, the armed conflict in Ukraine, have already been made and will come to the front. That will be made public shortly after the summit in Alaska.
David DeBatto, thank you so much. Geopolitical analyst and retired U.S. Army counterintelligence officer. He's been our guest. Thank you so much and have a pleasant evening, sir. And thank you for watching World Talks on TVP World. Please stay tuned to the TVP World for more interesting comments.